the next massive domino is clearly Kirk Cousins. So this has felt to me that he's not playing in Minnesota. Like, if he was playing in Minnesota, this is one of those ones where it feels like there's a very easy way of getting Kirk Cousins to re-sign in Minnesota, and if that was the case, it would have happened already, right? He wants a re-up of the standard Kirk Cousins deal, the 3-year, fully guaranteed contract, and at 35 and a half years old, coming off an Achilles, the Vikings don't want to do that. But there's probably a team out there that will, at which point Kirk goes playing somewhere else, right?
That is the read I have on it as well. We're starting to see more and more reporting from all the big insiders and whatnot, and almost kind of like hinting. I think we get that with a quarterback or two in the offseason. Like last year, there were reports about Baker Mayfield and Tampa having mutual interest in like February. So I think it's Atlanta and Denver. We talked about one of these teams. Denver, I think maybe that's the signal we should be taking from them. Again, they had to make a bunch of moves to clear cap and get off some contracts, but I'm sure there's more coming. I think Simmons got his standalone announcement, and now there's probably a bunch more moves on the way. Maybe a Tim Patrick, a DJ Jones, there's other names there that I'm keeping an eye on. So I think it's one of those two. I think it's the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton getting impatient and building the Western version of the New Orleans Saints. And then I think it's Atlanta, who obviously everyone's been talking about. If I had to guess, it'd be the Atlanta Falcons. They're in a dome. They're in a bad division, unlike the AFC West. I think that one makes a ton of sense.
It does, right? That one's the one that's made all the sense all the way along. That and we said it's a good team. Like the Atlanta Falcons, with all the weapons they have and with an offensive line that's really good, if you put Kirk Cousins on that offense, it's immediately a really good unit, and the defense is a work in progress. But signing Kirk Cousins lets you spend the 8th overall pick on maybe the first defender off the board, plus all the other draft capital they have. Like, they could make that team pretty damn good pretty quickly. It's not going to be rivaling Kansas City, but it's in a worse division. So they immediately catapult to the front of that division and, look like a team that could make some noise in the NFC.
And I think that's got to be appealing, right? Like, this is a short-term, maybe 2-year proposition. It's just, like that is your easiest path forward to getting at least in the playoffs and just playing good ball. They have a good offensive line. They have good offensive weapons. Defense showed some strides last year and got better. PFF Zach, obviously, I think would be a good pairing at offensive coordinator. They'll attack the middle of the field. They'll do all the things you want to see. Yeah, it seems to line up. And Arthur Blank is a guy that wants to spend, that is, I wouldn't say impatient, but you probably could say impatient, and just wants to field a contender as often as possible. I think they are too. It's a bad NFC, but they're pretty quickly arguably a top 5 team in the conference, in an outcome where things go their way.
And I feel like unlike there are some quarterbacks that would just go wherever the money is highest. I feel like in addition to Kirk Cousins being in the Sports Business Hall of Fame in terms of his contracts throughout his NFL career, I think he's also acutely aware of what's best for him, in terms of, remember for years there was this speculation that Kirk Cousins kind of padded his stats, late in the game. Let's not try that hard to come back. Let's just make sure we're getting completions, and the passer rating is going to end up at 103 or whatever, and the interceptions aren't going to be there. He's modified that throughout his NFL career, but I think when the Vikings deal, when Washington finally said enough is enough and put a stop date there, he apparently had more money on the table from the New York Jets and instead chose Minnesota. We're talking a dome team. We're talking not the Jets. There were reasons that it made more sense for Kirk Cousins to go to Minnesota, and obviously that's worked out really well. Again, if his options this offseason are essentially go back to Minnesota, go to Atlanta, dome, 2 reasonable rosters sitting there without Patrick Mahomes in the division, or go play in Denver where it's freezing cold for a couple of months of the year at altitude in a division with Mahomes and Justin Herbert and all these kinds of things. It would, if you're Kirk Cousins, it would take a lot of money to make me take that option versus the other two.
Yeah, and look, maybe there's a price. Maybe there's a number. But, because like you said, he is a first ballot Business of Football Hall of Famer, no question about it. Might get his own wing in the building. But, it's just all those other factors, I think, matter at the end of the day. Obviously the kids and everything, and, his wife's from Georgia. Everyone keeps talking about that, too. That might be your last move. You might be retiring to Atlanta and, or the Georgia area, whatever. It seems like we're going to hear about that one. There's miraculously going to be a deal done at 4 p.m. or whatever it is, noon on March 11th.